The French Quarter was already sweltering by mid-morning, the kind of heat that made the wrought iron balconies feel like branding irons above the shop windows. Inside her own storefront, Quarter Roots, Bianca moved from shelf to shelf with the ease of someone checking on a well-oiled machine. Her staff, two young women dressed in matching cream tunics and head wraps, worked quietly behind the counter. She was halfway through aligning a display of spiritual oils when the bell above the front door chimed, an expensive sound, carefully chosen to signal elegance, not chaos. Alexa walked in wearing oversized sunglasses and a sleeveless wrap dress that looked effortless and expensive. Her heels made a soft click against the old pine floorboards as she smiled.
Morning, B. Hope I'm not catching you at a bad time.
Bianca smiled, but her hands didn't stop arranging. You never show up without a reason, so what's today's? Alexa laughed, low and casual, and slid her sunglasses up onto her head.
Can I drop in on a friend? Shop looks beautiful, by the way. Your girls keep it tighter than mine ever could.
Bianca finally turned, wiping her hands on a linen cloth. Now I know you're lying. They both laughed, but the air between them was slightly brittle. Two women who knew each other's ambitions a little too well.
I've been thinking about how fast everything's shifting lately. New players, old ghosts, and one familiar name making quite a bit of noise again.
Bianca raised an eyebrow but didn't respond. Alexa stopped near the shelf of fixed jar candles, picked one up, and examined the wick.
I swung by Sabina's apothecary the other day.
Really? Alexa set the candle down gently.
Celeste's Sabina's granddaughter, right? She's grounded, very calm, polite, a bit old school. Pretty too, in a sweet sort of way. But I couldn't quite figure out if she's naive or just playing deep.
Bianca folded her arms. Celeste was never naive.
Apparently someone already tried to rattle her. Word is someone dropped a bird at her door, powder too.
Bianca's expression didn't shift, but her eyes sharpened. Alexa continued.
She handled it, or at least, she hasn't closed her doors, so I assume it didn't work.
Bianca leaned a hip against the counter. You think she doesn't know who left it?
Oh, I'm sure she has guesses.
Bianca smiled, thin and unreadable. Alexa held her gaze, that polished calm never cracking. I like to know where the balance is tipping, is all. Well, in this city, the balance tips whichever way the spirits lean. Alexa tilted her head.
You think she's got the spirits on her side?
I think you're asking a lot of questions for someone who already made up her mind. There was a pause, a tight glittering thread of silence before Alexa laughed again, light and easy.
It's always a pleasure, B. You keep your ears open now.
Oh, always. But the real question is, who's whispering into yours? Bianca thought. Alexa's smile flickered just for a moment before she turned and walked out, the door chiming gently behind her. Bianca watched her leave, then turned to one of her girls. Make sure the vives at the threshold get refreshed tonight. I'll move the ogu pot to the front door, just for a few days. Everything all right? Bianca didn't answer. She just looked out the window toward the quarter. Storm's coming. Might be best to wait and see which way the wind's gonna blow. The heat shimmered off the pavement in mid-city, where the pace slowed just a notch from the pulsing hum of the French Quarter. On the edge of the Treme, nestled between a rundown record store and an abandoned corner bar, stood a faded green building with hand-painted gold lettering, Botanica Santa Ana. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of camphor, dried herbs, and melted wax. The shelves were packed tightly with candles in every color, labeled in Spanish and English. Statues of saints and orishas crowded the front windows, all facing outward like watchful guardians. The overhead lights were dim, and the buzz of an old ceiling fan mingled with the low hiss of a burner under a simmering pot in the back. Celeste stepped in, her sandals quiet on the tile. A faint chime announced her arrival, but there was no rush of greeting, just the familiar hush of a place where power gathered quietly. Fernando emerged slowly, wiping his hands on a red shop towel. He was short and stocky, his cafe au lait colored skin that was still smooth despite the silver streaks in his thick curls. He wore a blue guayabera, khakis, and the heavy scent of Florida water.
Celeste, didn't think I'd see you here anytime soon.
Hola, Mr. Fernando. Shipment's delayed. I need white penny candles. Fernando scratched his jaw and motioned toward the back.
Still got a few cases left. Help yourself.
As she made her way past a wall of laminated prayer cards and bags of powdered roots, he added,
Heard there's been activity at Sabina's place.
Celeste didn't pause, but her tone was even. Business is steady. He gave a short chuckle.
That's what they're calling it now.
She returned with 24 candles cradled in her arms. How much? He leaned against the counter, watching her carefully.
For you? 15. And a question.
She arched a brow. Go on.
You planning to stay in this fight? Or just passing through?
Celeste set the candles down, fished bills from her pocket, and met his gaze. I didn't come back to fight, but I won't be run off either. Fernando nodded slowly.
Good. A lot of folks need reminding this is no game. And that blood remembers.
As she turned to leave, he added,
Watch your back with Alexa. She plays clean until she doesn't.
Celeste didn't reply. The bell above the door gave a soft chime as she stepped back into the sunlight, candles in hand, spine straight and shoulders relaxed. She didn't need to answer. Her silence was response enough. Fernando watched her go, then returned to the back room where a small black pot bubbled quietly.
Blood remembers,
he said again and stirred the pot 3 times clockwise. The shop was quieter than usual that afternoon. Most days, Fernando liked it that way. He moved slowly through the narrow aisles of Botanica Santa Ana, straightening a candle here, adjusting a St. Michael statue there. The familiar rhythm of the space, its silence, its smells, its spirit, kept him grounded. The kind of peace that only came when the outside world had the decency to stay outside. He passed the front counter and paused near the altar tucked into the corner wall. A photo of his late wife sat beside Sabina's, framed in soft gold and flanked by offerings. 2 women who had never met but were bound by love and suffering. Sabina had come nearly every day toward the end, bringing teas and poultices and laughter that could still crack through despair. Fernando lit a stick of copal and murmured a prayer in Spanish before resting a hand briefly on the counter.
She looked just like her,
he whispered to no one. He could still picture a younger Celeste trailing behind Sabina all those years ago, barely old enough to peer over the counter. Back when Sabina had just opened her place near Magazine Street. That had been a hard season. Sabina's husband had died suddenly, and the insurance company dragged its feet on the payout. Sabina had come to him, quiet but proud. Fernando had respected that. She hadn't asked for charity. She asked for credit. He had offered her better, the first few months of inventory, delivered without fuss and never once mentioned again. It wasn't just business. It was about the code. Sabina had helped his wife in her final days. What he gave back was simply balance. He leaned against the edge of a shelf and sighed. Celeste didn't know any of that. Probably never would. But she had the old blood in her veins. The gifts, too. Maybe even stronger than Sabina, though she hadn't grown fully into it yet. He thought of the day Celeste had come into the shop alone, face pale but eyes steady, asking for the materials for initiation. It was right before she left Mark. The spirits had made their choice. He'd known from the way Mark always flinched when he came into the shop with her. Something about the man had always rung false. Now she was back, stronger, quieter, wiser maybe, but still with that flash behind the eyes. The same fire that Sabina had when she cursed out a corrupt priest who tried to shame her. Fernando walked toward the back room where the herbs were hung in tight bundles from the ceiling and a thick black book rested on the table. He flipped it open absently, fingers tracing over old recipes and client notes.
Sabina,
he murmured.
You'd be proud, but she's going to need more than pride soon.
He didn't like the way things were shifting. Too many new players, too many old wounds reopened. He'd stay neutral. That was his way. Let others burn bridges and light candles to saints they barely believed in. But he'd be watching. Always watching. And if the scales tipped too far, if anyone threatened what little order they had left, then maybe, just maybe, he'd choose a side. But not yet. Not yet. The morning heat had not risen to its full weight, but already Celeste could feel something thick in the air. Not humidity, something else. She paused at her back door, hand on the knob, keys in the other. The front yard was quiet, too quiet. The usual sounds, birds chirping, distant dogs, the soft rush of the wind through the oak leaves, were gone. Stillness pressed against her skin. She turned slowly, sensing movement. The wall behind her shimmered, as if the plaster rippled like water. From it, a figure emerged, tall, translucent, cloaked in pale mist and grief. It was feminine in shape, but its face never resolved fully, always shifting, flickering like candlelight. The spirit raised its arms and reached for her. Celeste didn't flinch. The presence felt familiar, sad but warm. A yearning soaked into the ether around it. She stepped toward it, heart open, and the spirit embraced her. But then she felt the sharp, sick heat of betrayal, a sting in her back, a flash of silver. She gasped and stumbled forward, but when she turned, the spirit was gone, not a trace. Only the scent of gardenias lingered, too sweet, like decay masked by perfume. Hands shaking slightly, she pressed them to her heart, steadying her breath. She needed to open the shop. She needed to act like things were normal. Routine was protection. She walked to the apothecary in silence, letting her heels clack loudly on the sidewalk, as if to announce her claim on the space. Once inside, she began her morning preparations. Floor swept, incense lit, altar tended. But when she opened the rear door to the courtyard, she froze. Curled in the far corner beneath the rusted iron staircase was a fawn, or rather what had once been a fawn. Small, spotted, folded as if in eternal rest. No wounds, no signs of a struggle, just a baby deer dead and unmoving, its eyes cloudy and dry. Celeste stared for a long moment, then closed the door. She didn't call anyone, didn't ask for help. She locked the front door and all the shutters, turned the sign to closed, and began gathering what she needed. Salt, Florida water, river stones, a white dress and head wrap, 3 keys, an old brass bell. She moved with the steady rhythm of someone who had been trained for this since before memory, the kind of ritual they didn't teach anymore, except in dreams. In the center of the shop, she drew a circle with cascarilla. Around it, vives for Ogu Ferret, Grand Bois, and Calfu. She bathed herself in silence, lit candles until the heat shimmered against the windows, prayed until her lips went numb. The vision started, flickers of shadow behind shadow, a snake swallowing its own tail, a burning bridge over a river of mirrors, Alexa standing in a circle of fire, but the fire was inside her eyes. Tavo with his hands bleeding but smiling as if nothing hurt. Bianca laughing, her face split in half, one side light, the other darkness. Mr. Lem on one knee by a grave, pouring water into the earth while whispering a name. And above it all, the spirit, the one who had embraced and betrayed her, watching from the edge of the circle, faceless and weeping. The visions passed like a storm. Celeste collapsed to her knees, breath heaving. White chalk clung to her hands. The bell had fallen silent, but something had shifted. The shop felt cleaner, emptied, reclaimed. She crawled to the altar, pressed her forehead to the floor. "Whatever comes, I won't run," she whispered. Outside, the sun blazed. The baby deer was gone. Inside, the air held still, like the moment just before the thunder rolls. Celeste didn't usually chase gossip, but the fawn had unsettled her. Death had a language, and someone was trying to speak to her in it. Whatever this was, it wasn't random, and it wasn't amateur work. She picked up her phone and stared at it for a moment before pressing the call button. "Bianca, you got a minute?" There was a pause. Then Bianca's voice, chipper but measured. "For you, always?" They agreed to meet at a small cafe on St. Charles Avenue that's quiet enough for a real conversation. Celeste arrived first, ordered a ginger lemonade, and chose a seat with her back to the wall. Bianca walked in 10 minutes later, effortlessly elegant in a flowing cream blouse and gold hoops. She kissed Celeste on the cheek before sitting down. Bianca said, stirring her iced coffee, "You look like you've seen something." Something like that. Bianca didn't press. She never did. She let the silence linger until Celeste broke it. You hear anything lately? Strange, maybe tied to me? Bianca sipped her drink. Define strange. Like dead things turning up where they don't belong. That got a flicker. Bianca looked up, expression unreadable. I heard someone dropped a bird at your place. Something quiet, clean, no blood. Celeste nodded slowly. Wasn't a bird, not this time. Bianca tilted her head. Baby deer, curled up like it was sleeping. That rattled Bianca. Her fingers tightened around the glass for a moment. Well, damn, that ain't subtle. Celeste leaned in. You know who might send something like that? Bianca hesitated. She looked away toward the street. You really back, huh? I'm here. Then you already know who's been trying to fill the vacuum. Alexa. Bianca finally met her eyes. She's not just playing shopkeeper. She wants to control the flow, information, materials. Who gets blessed and who doesn't? Celeste's jaw clenched. And the fawn? Bianca exhaled. That was a message. You're marked, watched. She tried the pretty gift first. Now it's more direct. Why tell me this? Bianca smiled faintly. Because I don't trust her. And because Sabina wouldn't want you walking blind. Miss Sabina once told me never to let pretty words keep me from feeling the truth. That was years ago, but I didn't forget. Celeste watched her for a long moment. You picking sides? I pick moments, Bianca said, standing to go. Just don't turn your back. Some things smile before they bite. She left without looking back. Celeste sat there a while longer, her ginger lemonade untouched, growing warm in the sun. It had been a long, quiet afternoon, the kind Celeste used to treasure before everything turned sharp-edged and humming with tension. The shop smelled of frankincense and cedar, comforting, grounding. Tante Vivienne was perched near the altar with a basket of fresh herbs in her lap, sorting through lemon balm and mugwort for drying. Mr. Lem sat by the front window, cane propped against his knee, a glass of sweet tea sweating on the windowsill. The lull was nice, rare. Celeste was restocking oils behind the counter when the front door creaked open. A man entered, tall, wiry, hoodie low over his eyes despite the heat outside. He moved too quickly, too jittery, like someone who hadn't slept right in weeks. Afternoon, Celeste said cautiously. He didn't answer, just hovered near the shelves, eyes darting around. Mr. Lem's cane tapped the floor once. Hard. The man flinched. Celeste watched him from behind the counter. Tante Vivienne had stopped moving, her fingers frozen mid-sort. Need help finding something? Celeste asked, voice steady. The man turned toward her, hand slipping into his hoodie pocket. The shape under the fabric was unmistakable. He took one step toward the counter. Then everything changed. The air dropped 10 degrees. The lights flickered. Mr. Lem rose halfway from his chair and slammed his cane to the floor again, this time with a sharp crack that echoed like thunder. The man's body jolted backward as if struck. He hit the floor hard, gasping, eyes wide in terror. Something unseen had shoved him off his feet. He scrambled back, scrambling for the door without bothering to pull the weapon. Mr. Lem growled, his voice low and full of something ancient. The man fled, the door banging shut behind him. Silence. Celeste slowly exhaled. Her knees were shaking.
That one didn't come on his own,
Mr. Lem said, easing back into his seat.
That wasn't just a man, something was riding him. A spirit with blood on its teeth.
Tante Vivienne nodded, her lips tight. Somebody trying to open a door they don't understand. Celeste moved to the door and locked it. Her hands trembled as she turned the deadbolt. We need to cleanse this place again. Tonight, she said. You need to cleanse yourself first. Tante Vivienne added. That boy was just the hand. The real trouble's still out there. Celeste glanced back at the altar. The candles were still burning, but the flame on the white one flickered oddly, guttering sideways. War had already started, and the shop was now officially on the battlefield. By the time they finished the cleansing at Sabina's apothecary, the sky had deepened into indigo. Tante Vivienne and Celeste had worked in concert, moving from corner to corner, cleansing every inch with a mix of smoke, salt, holy water, and prayer. The air felt clearer afterward, though still tense, like the moment after a storm when thunder might roll back in. Mr. Lem had left quietly just before sunset, claiming he needed to check on some things at home. Celeste had offered to drive him, but he waved her off with a tired smile. Back in Holly Grove, his small shotgun house stood like a guardian in the twilight. Inside, he lit 3 white candles and placed them before a simple altar where old bones, river stones, and small jars of oils lined a shelf. He washed his hands with hyssop and bay rum, drew a salt circle, and knelt slowly, knees popping in protest.
Show me who. Show me what I need to see.
The trance took him quickly. He slipped into the dark folds of spirit, crossing veils as he had done for decades. But this time, the crossing came with a pull in his chest. He found himself in a misty plain, an intersection of pathways lit only by flickering lamplight. And she was there, tall red-gold hair spilling over her shoulders, her eyes too bright to be human. Alexa. She didn't speak, just stood smiling in a silk dress that moved like smoke. Behind her loomed a shadow, a grotesque thing with long fingers and skin like rotted parchment. The spirit pulsed with hunger.
Old man,
Alexa said when she saw him.
you meddling in other people's business?
Mr. Lem reached for the satchel at his hip, trying to pull a charm free. The spirit behind Alexa surged forward, and pain shot through his chest. He stumbled backward in the spirit world, and in the waking world, his body jolted, knocking over one of the candles. He came to in his own living room, collapsed beside the altar, breath shallow and ragged. One hand clutched his chest, the other reaching for something no longer there. A knock. Then the door burst open. Uncle Lem? It was his niece, Talia. She had come to bring him leftover red beans and rice and found him gasping on the floor. She called for help, hands steady even as her voice trembled. Later, as the paramedics carried him out, he whispered to Talitha.
Tell Celeste. She got enemies with deep roots. Tell her not to fight alone.
Then the lights of the ambulance swallowed him whole. It was almost midnight when Celeste and Vivian finished their work in the Botanica. As they wiped sweat from their brows and began to gather the tools of the ritual, a knock sounded at the front door. Celeste moved cautiously and saw a young woman, worry etched across her face. "You Celeste?" she asked, glancing from Celeste to Tante Vivian. "I'm Talia, Uncle Lem's niece. He told me to tell you something." Celeste's heart lurched. "Is he all right?" "He's alive, but it was close. He had some kind of spell hit him hard. He said you got enemies with deep roots. Told me to tell you not to fight alone." Celeste's eyes darkened with resolve. She nodded. "Thank you for bringing that message. He wanted you to have this." Talia held out her right hand. Celeste took the mahogany walking stick with trembling hands and watched as Talia turned and disappeared into the dusk. Tante Vivienne came to stand beside her. "You know what this means." Celeste nodded. "It's time to stop playing nice. The spirits are sending warnings." Vivian pursed her lips. "Then we need to make a move of our own. Something that shows we ain't scared. Something public." Celeste's mind spun with possibilities. "Juneteenth is coming." Vivian raised an eyebrow. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" "A ritual in the quarter. Big, loud, unmistakable. Let everybody see who walks with me." Vivian smiled. "Good. Let 'em feel the ground shake with the weight of your ancestors." On Juneteenth, the French Quarter pulsed with life. The corner of Royal and St. Anne brimmed with tourists, musicians, and the curious hum of celebration. Brass bands drifted down the street, beads clicked around wrists, laughter mingled with the scent of pralines and fried dough. And then the drums began. Not from a band or a club, but from an open circle of fire and smoke that appeared as if from nowhere. People turned, some stepped back, others were drawn closer, moths to a mystery. In the center stood Celeste. Barefoot on the flagstones, wrapped in white linen and gold-threaded cloth, she raised her arms. A white veil covered her face, embroidered with vives, sacred symbols drawn to call forth the lua, so fine they shimmered in the summer sun. Her skin gleamed with sweat and purpose. Around her, women in white danced in slow, synchronized rhythm. Men beat djembes and congas in a pulsing cadence that felt older than the buildings towering above them. Smoke curled upward from bowls of burning herbs, sweetgrass, frankincense, Dambala's offerings. Then the air shifted. Even the tourists felt it, an electricity on the skin, a pressure behind the eyes. One by one, they came, ancestors. First, women in gele and kente cloth, with faces like carved ivory and fire behind their eyes. Then men in threadbare overalls and wide-brimmed hats, the scent of fields and revolution lingering on their coats. Flashes of soldiers in Union blues, nurses from the colored hospital, Creole women wearing tignons, a boy with a slingshot, a grandmother with a Bible and a jar of snuff. They gathered around Celeste, not ghosts, not quite, not illusions either. Even the unbelievers gasped as translucent figures shimmered into full view, visible in the thickening smoke and sunlight, visible in spite of disbelief. At Maison Elementaire, Alexa heard the drums and stepped onto the sidewalk. Tavo was already outside, his partner Clay at his side. Clay asked. Alexa didn't answer. Her face was tight. She gripped the wrought iron post beside her doorway so hard her knuckles turned white. Her gaze stayed fixed, calculating, watching. Her lips barely moved, but the look in her eyes was pure venom. A block over, Bianca emerged with her children. Her eldest daughter tugged her hand.
Mama, who's that lady? Are the spirits mad?
No, baby, they're not mad. They're just showing who they belong to. And Celeste? She stood with arms still raised as the drums surged and the crowd thickened. Her voice joined the rhythm, speaking words no one taught her but that her blood remembered. She sang in ancient tongues, in tears, in fire. The wind whipped through the street like an answering call. Even the buildings seemed to lean closer. When the last drumbeat fell, the spirits didn't vanish right away. They faded into the smoke and wind and roots of the city. Celeste lowered her arms. The veil slipped from her face. She didn't smile. She didn't speak. But her eyes swept over Alexa, Tavo, Bianca, and every stranger gathered. And in that gaze, no one doubted. The spirits had chosen. And Celeste Boudreaux now stood fully in her power, even if war still loomed on the horizon. Later that night, Celeste sat alone on her back porch, her legs tucked beneath her and a cup of warm tea in her hands. The sweat had dried, the drums long gone, but the vibration still hummed in her bones. Tears slipped down her cheeks, not from fear or sorrow, but from the sheer weight of it all. The ancestors had answered. The city had witnessed, and now there was no going back. The morning after the Juneteenth ritual, the energy at Sabina's apothecary was subdued but charged, like the air before a summer storm. The front door chime jingled softly as Celeste restocked the counter display with small jars of cleansing baths and beeswax candles. A few customers lingered in the shop, browsing shelves with quiet interest. One older woman, Miss Elvira from 2 blocks over, glanced up as the door opened again. Her eyes narrowed the moment Alexa stepped in. Without a word, she slipped her basket back onto the counter and headed for the door. The others didn't follow, but their chatter stilled. They watched from behind displays and shelves, their ears open, their mouths shut. Celeste felt Alexa before she saw her. The woman moved like a breeze, trying to pretend it wasn't a storm. She stepped inside, dressed in a crisp white linen pantsuit that clung to her tall frame like privilege. Her auburn hair was pulled back into a sleek twist, sunglasses perched on her head, and her lips painted the same shade as blood oranges. Celeste didn't look up at first. She said flatly, continuing her work.
Quite the performance yesterday. You really know how to make a statement.
Celeste met her eyes. Didn't know it was a performance, just a ritual. We honor our people out loud. Alexa moved toward a shelf lined with oils, idly picking up a bottle of marjoram.
People are talking about the spirits, the vives, the ancestors. Even tourists are asking about it. You realize you disrupted the entire French Quarter for half a day?
Celeste rested both palms flat on the counter, her expression unreadable.
Didn't hear anyone complaining. Folks were weeping, praying, dancing. I'd call that healing, not disruption.
Alexa set the bottle down with a quiet clink.
I'm just saying, there are ways to build community without shaking the foundations.
Celeste tilted her head slightly. Sometimes the foundation needs shaking. There was a long silence between them, thick with meaning. Alexa smiled, but it didn't touch her eyes.
Well, I came by to congratulate you. Not everyone can stir the spirits and keep their composure. It's impressive.
Celeste stepped around the counter slowly. Her voice was cool, calm. If you came for oil or candles, you're welcome to shop. If you came to fish for gossip or offer backhanded blessings, you can turn right back around. Alexa's eyes narrowed for just a second before she caught herself. She let out a soft chuckle.
You misread me. I believe we're on the same side, Celeste. We both want what's best for this city.
Celeste's gaze didn't waver. Is that right? Alexa leaned in, lowering her voice.
Power is power. Either you channel it or it burns you alive. That ritual proved you can channel it. That makes you...
Celeste didn't move, didn't flinch. She held Alexa's gaze for a long, quiet moment, letting the unfinished sentence echo between them like a bell. Then she tilted her head slightly, a slow, knowing smile curling at the edge of her lips. Only to folks who don't know what they're playing with. Alexa took a step back. Her mask of composure cracked for a blink, just long enough for Celeste to see it. Have a blessed day, Celeste said, turning away and returning to her shelf. Alexa left without another word. The door chime jingled again, and silence reclaimed the shop. Tante Vivian emerged from the back room, a smirk on her face. She came in here thinking she was going to rattle you. Poor thing don't even know which spirit's been called. Celeste didn't reply because she didn't want to contradict her elder. She believed that Alexa knew, and that she didn't like it one bit. Instead, Celeste just picked up the next jar and continued restocking. But inside, she knew something had shifted. Thank you for joining us in this next chapter of Ashes at the Crossroads, Part 2. If Celeste's courage, the ancestors' call, and the rising spiritual battles kept you on the edge of your seat, like this video to show your support, share it with friends who love powerful mystical stories rooted in culture and spirit. Subscribe to Blue Fae Press to stay connected to our world of deep magic and ancestral strength. Drop a comment below. Tell us who you think will stand with Celeste when the final battle begins, and what secrets you think still hide in the shadows. And don't stop here. Watch Part 3 to witness Celeste confront her deepest rivals and step fully into her power.